Welcome back. We're discussing what the recent suspension of the vaccine mandate for travelers could mean for you, the Canadian. Perhaps you are also an industry airline worker. Maybe you've been let go because you did not submit to the mandate. How will these new measures or the retraction of the imposed measures mean for you? And joining me again is Greg Hill from Free to Fly. Greg, recently, and I think it was within the last 10 days, I read an op-ed or a personal account from a flight attendant out of the UK. And it was fascinating to read what their life was like over the course of 3 or 4 days and how chaotic their jobs have become. They said, when we started working for this airline, and it was a major airline, things were fine, and then COVID hit. And they were saying that it's not even the mandates that are the issue. It's just there are not enough employees. And even if there is a suspension of the mandates, we could still continue to see more disruption with respect to travel. I want to talk about it from the employee perspective. Tell me about how airline employees were impacted by the vaccine mandate and what this new suspension may mean for them.
Well, it's difficult to do that in a fairly short soundbite. I mean, I hear from hundreds of different employees, and I can tell you some of them are holding on from a thread away from bankruptcy because they were at one end of the economic spectrum, and then all of a sudden overnight that rapidly changed due to the overreach of government. So it wasn't even something they could transition to.
Right.
So a change in being able to get back to work is welcome on some levels, but I can also tell you I'm hearing from more than a few employees who aren't sure they want to go back for a variety of reasons. For some of them, it's the polarizing climate. It's the attitudes of society as a whole. I mean, if you look at a pilot, for instance, we're essentially locked in a closet for hours at a time. And we're not fools. You don't go looking to pick a fight with the guy that you're flying with. But we all know, even over dinner, you try to talk about something other than COVID and vaccines. And inevitably, 5 minutes later, you're back where you started, right?
Yes, we're all experiencing that.
Right. So it's difficult. But the other aspect is not just the lack of support from some of these airlines and aviation companies, but what feels like intentional undermining and almost a prosecutorial vindictiveness that's been unleashed on individual employees. I could tell you story after story that would shock you.
Well, we have time. If there's some particular story you want to share, by all means.
Well, I mean, just in terms of people trying to get accommodations, and this isn't isolated to the aviation industry, but the idea that someone with a sincerely held religious belief should have to walk hat in hand to some faceless, nameless gray entity and plead for their job if they might be so kind as to deem my sincerely held religious beliefs acceptable. That's stomach turning for somebody who is really a person of deep faith. But the handful, I mean, the vast majority, I don't have a percentage, but I'd say it's pushing 90% were just outright denied without any means of appeal. But even the handful that were approved, you've got employees who were offered jobs making like 1/6, 1/7 of their previous pay as some means of an accommodation.
Wow.
And again, if you're not prepared for that financially, you're burning through savings or selling your home, which some of us have had to do, and otherwise. So it's not what I would call a celebratory moment, and I'm sure you know that without me saying so. It's very difficult to turn around. But even from a philosophical standpoint, there's a dark underbelly to the corporate world that some of us have been exposed to, and even from a philosophical standpoint, you find yourself questioning whether you want to be partnered with organizations that are really excited to be on the leading edge of a globalist agenda. So we hear quite a bit from our employees, but again, and this goes for passengers as well, we hear from people that have tried to drive thousands of miles across the country to be at the bedside of a loved one on a deathbed, and they don't make it in time. So to say that these suspensions are meaningless, which some people are saying, I understand the anger and I understand that approach. And rest assured, we, along with so many other Canadians, are far, far from packing up and heading home. This is a battle that's going to be going on for some time. But I think we need to recognize at the same time the people with a warrior spirit who have really fought back against the gross overreach of our government.
And you brought up a very good point. Would they even want to return if, you're part of a massive corporation? I know you're from the airline industry, so I keep mentioning the airlines. I saw on Twitter, I would follow what was being said by some of these CEOs of these companies where they're demanding a lifting of the mandates, but yet they themselves still employ one for their own employees.
Right.
And I felt that was hypocritical. And it really bothered me. We can talk about this in just a few moments because we've got to cut to commercial break. We'll be right back.